Very good. Very good. Well, welcome to the Community Electric Drive Electric event breakout room. This is sort of modeled on the Belmont Drives Electric program, which was organized by Belmont Light, the Belmont Energy Committee, and Sustainable Belmont. I'm pleased to welcome Marty. Thanks for joining us. Marty is a current member of the Belmont Energy Committee, and he'll talk about community drive electric events. Thanks, Marty.
Great, thank you, Dean. Can everyone see my screen?
Yes, we can.
Great. So it's great to be here with you all. So I'm gonna talk about what we did in Belmont to promote electric vehicles. And so what we are, so we are in Belmont, we have a municipal utility, Belmont Light. And they, along with the Energy Committee, who's in charge of helping Belmont reduce its carbon emissions, Sustainable Belmont, and importantly, Belmont EV enthusiasts. So, hopefully in whatever community you're in, you can unearth folks who are, already enthused about EVs. And our goal was to promote the use of EVs throughout town. And in addition, partnering with Belmont Light, encouraging people to charge off the peak, right? So overnight to sort of multiply the environmental impact of EVs. How do we do this? We provide residents with the knowledge that they need, help them, introduce them to test drives. I think we found the most important thing to encourage people to drive an EV is just to get them to sit behind the wheel and experience it, because it's quite a bit much better than what we all have been used to. And so when we had a chance to speak to folks, we had two main tacks. We'd, for people who are in the choir like us, right, we'd highlight the environmental benefits. So, go through what we talked about in Belmont. So on the Energy Committee, we have done a census of where our emissions come from, and similar to what Senator Barrett outlined, most of our emissions in Belmont for residential citizens comes from vehicles. And so it's an important thing that we want to highlight. And so, for people who are interested in reducing their personal climate impact, we highlighted, the types of actions you could take, right? You can replace your car with an EV, you can switch to a heat pump, you can install solar, all of which are beneficial. And, getting an EV is up towards the top in terms of reducing one's own carbon footprint. And we gave folks, more analogies, right? That this is, driving an EV is equivalent to driving thousands of fewer miles in a gas car, consuming less gasoline, cutting your household electricity by half, or, a carbon capture equivalent of many acres of trees. So that's one. So again, if we're talking to folks who are like us in the choir and are interested in their, reducing their carbon emissions, we sort of took that tack. When we had the chance to speak to people who maybe weren't, primarily motivated by reducing their carbon footprint, we focused more on affordability. So we highlighted things like the state rebate, which Senator Barrett talked about, $2,500, the federal tax credit up to $7,500, which is still in place for some manufacturers, and hopefully the federal government can see fit to re-up again for all manufacturers. And then the other thing that was really great was at the time we started this in around 2017. On our own, we had relationships with a few dealerships like Quirk Chevrolet and Myrac in Arlington, and there was a Volkswagen dealership. So we had a handful of partnerships directly with dealerships where they would bring vehicles to our events and take people for test drives, talk to them about everything. Although it's worth noting that the volunteers with Belmont Drives Electric also offered to ride along on these test drives, and I personally did that a few times, which was good because it's often the case that the dealer representatives weren't terribly educated on the capabilities of electric vehicles. And so it was good to be in the back seat to sort of jump in when they couldn't answer a question or weren't quite portraying things correctly. But it was nice to have these relationships with dealers because they had prearranged purchase and lease deals. And I took advantage of one of these through the Green Energy Consumers Alliance, who has a Drive Green program, which is really great, still ongoing. And so I leased a Chevy Bolt, and the price that was on the website was just the price that I got at the dealer. I still couldn't believe it when I went there, and it all just kind of worked, but it did. So that helped people feel good about moving forward with this. And then again, since in Belmont, since we have a municipal light plant, they worked in partnership with us to provide a rebate on installing electric charger at one's house. And so there's a $250 rebate from Belmont Light for installing EV level 2 charger at your home. And the other thing they had, which has changed recently, but there was a 15%, they called it a rebate at the time, for your electricity usage that you used from your vehicle charger off peak. So again, trying to encourage people to not come home from work and plug in at 5:30 at night right on the peak, which is is not good overall for carbon emissions. But that helps, those few rebates help further reduce the cost of owning and operating an electric vehicle. And then we had some comparison spreadsheets where we'd take comparable cars, in this case, Chevy Volt and a Chevy Malibu, and just break down for folks what is your monthly cost and cost per mile. In my case, the Chevy Bolt that I leased, we paid $200 a month, and the $2,500 rebate from the state made it so we were cash flow positive for the whole first year. And it's just bananas how good the the affordability piece is. So this is kind of the approach we would take when we could speak to groups who weren't primarily motivated by climate impact. And we found this to be effective to hook people in just economically. And then the other thing, turning more to how do we reach people who are not like all of us here are going to turn up on a Saturday morning to learn more about reducing climate impact. And so we did a lot of marketing. And one of the things that was really effective for us was this big banner you see. This is over the bridge in Belmont Center. And in the morning commute, this gets really backed up with traffic. And so we had sort of a captive audience just staring at our banner, and pushing people to our website, where we had a Gmail account set up so people can email an EV coach, and we'll field questions because all of us are fairly new to this arena, and so helping people get comfortable with what does it take to get a charger, how do I find an electrician, where should I buy these cars, can I do a test drive. Oh, and I should mention that with the dealers, we had arrangements where you could schedule a test drive where we would come to people's house and pick them up at home and take them on a test drive. So it was exceedingly convenient. We found that to be pretty effective, again, of just making this easy. And on this banner too, in this one section, we would post when we would have a test drive event. We would post the date and the time there. So this kind of became like an ongoing information board, very public. That was very useful for us. And we put out placards around town, in high traffic areas to advertise events. This is my son standing in front of one such. But so we had this ongoing campaign of typical locations where we had marketing materials all throughout, which was really great. And some other strategies we did that were effective was advertising around town. So, having our banners up near, sporting fields where there's football games, soccer fields, and we had an advertisement in one of the playbills for the high school performance. We did a proximity mailing campaign. So we would, with people's permission who already had EVs, we would mail their neighbors and say, hey, your neighbor at 21 Prospect Street drives an EV and is happy to talk and show you around, give you a test drive. And so that was another way we kind of pulled people in who weren't seeking us out. And then some really effective events we had were things where you basically take the cars to where you already know a lot of people are going to be. And so Town Day is one such event where thousands of people show up to Town Day just because they want to ride carnival rides and eat kettle corn and pet a donkey. And so what we did is we entered a few of residents' EVs in the auto show, and the auto show had old vintage cars, fancy sports cars, and then some EVs that we slipped in there. And it was great because you had people who were wandering around the Town Day event for whatever compelled them to come there, but it wasn't climate change. But there they were, and then we could have conversations with them and about the EV, show them around, talk about what it's like to drive, give them a test drive. So that was really great. Likewise, at the farmers market, we brought EVs and we had an info booth set up so we could kind of just catch people who were there to pick up produce or whatever, but say, hey, we have an EV over there, would you like to go for a test drive? And so really effective at like bringing the cars to where people were at. And then again, Belmont Light as a partner would put out bill inserts to catch a wide array of folks in Belmont. And then at the time, More EV was making data on the number of rebates public. And so the first year we ran this program, we had 68 rebates filed, which exceeded our initial goal of getting 50 EVs out there. So we were quite pleased with it all. And with that, I'm happy to enter a discussion and take questions and chat.
Well, thank you, Marty. That was very clear and concise. And so, Usha, Eric, anyone have any questions?
All right, I guess I could at least start by talking about the apartment issue, right? Like charging an apartment, because I think that was brought up. And so there's a couple things we've tried to do in Belmont, which is to apply for grants, right, to get EV charging stations installed. And so there's a few locations around town, one in Belmont Center, one near Waverly Square. And in this latest round, we've particularly tried to target putting in public charging infrastructure near apartment buildings, because as you both bring up, this is a challenge, right? And so that's one way you can take action. And this was the EVIP program, EVIP. So we worked with Belmont Light to get grants for that. So that helps a little bit. And on the other side, and this doesn't help with existing apartment buildings, but there's a new development going in the McLean Hospital campus where there is going to be an apartment building. And we've worked with the developer and the planning board to get them to agree to pre-install charging stations. And the other thing is just put conduits in all of the parking spaces. So don't necessarily make the expense of wiring everything for a charging station at this point, but 10, 20 years from now, you're going to want to be able to put more charging stations in than today. So it's so if there's active development, you're trying to get engaged with your planning board to encourage at least run the conduits for the wire, even if you're not going to put charging stations in today. And it's something that they're agreeable to because it doesn't cost a lot of money.
That sounds like a really important step, Marty. Eric asked in the chat in terms of the grants, are they state grants, private grants, or?
Yeah, these are state grants. Yeah, so this EVIP program has grants, and there's it gets replenished every so often. I think recently we got another grant for a fast charger, which is probably even better. We have a few level 2 chargers, but this will be our first public DC fast charger. So you could be in and out in 20 minutes or half an hour, which would be a lot better for, somebody who lives in an apartment who has to go find a place to charge away from their home. If they could do that while they're having a meal or something, would be, a lot better.
Very good. I see Charlie has a question. Charlie?
Yeah, Marty, I think this is a fabulous program. Can you give me an idea of how many people do you think bought the cars for climate reasons and how many sort of went ahead for the technology, or you interested do something? I mean, the question is, how much beyond the choir do you think this program reached?
Yeah, so it's hard to quantify it exactly, but anecdotally, conversations I had with people were, we got many people to switch to EVs who weren't part of the climate community, right? Like we somehow got them to take a test drive at, at one of these events, and then convinced them and kind of held their hand to make the transition. So it's so I can't really quantify it, but it's hard. It wasn't zero, right? Like we were able to shepherd folks through the process who wouldn't have just shown up otherwise.
Just one other quick question, Liz, if I could slip this in. Marty, will you be available to advise other towns if they wanted to engage this program?
Yeah, absolutely. So we have an email address, and the website now redirects to Belmont Light page, but you can reach us at belmontdriveselectric@gmail.com. And if you have more detailed questions, I'm happy to help people who want to get something off the ground in their community.
It's great.
Yeah, on that question, Charlie, also anecdotally, there was some excitement actually from younger folks in terms of posting on Instagram and seeing if they could get their parents to kind of show up for an electric drive event. So you sort of, the technology, I think, does excite folks perhaps that aren't within the usual crowd that are concerned necessarily about climate change as a primary concern. Eric, I see you have a question, please.
Yeah, how did you first identify the people in the city with EVs who might, participate, help out?
Yeah, that's a great question.
I'm picturing creeping around from house to house and saying, you.
Yeah, we didn't have to go there. I mean, there, I think the choir, if you will, was sort of big enough, and we had enough of us who could sort of staff and were willing to let people sit in our cars and drive our cars. Or, some people didn't want other strangers to drive their car, and they would take people for rides. And so that's kind of a middle way, right? If you're, not comfortable with somebody crashing your nice EV. But aside from that, I know you can get data on, from your tax assessors, you can get VIN numbers, but I don't think you can connect back to who these people are and where they live, right? We've done that to get statistics on how many EVs are in Belmont, but that's a different question than what you're going for. So, so we didn't have to go down that way, but I'll bet if you had an initial event, you could probably attract people, and then you could build your volunteer base, organically that way. It's probably the way I would approach it.
Thank you.
Yeah, kind of related to all of these, Marty, I mean, is there a community of EV owners where sort of hesitant potential owners can get their questions answered?
Yeah, I think the closest I can think of is this, the Green Energy Consumer Alliance Drive Green program. They've done quite a bit of work on, helping people feel comfortable with this and producing videos, and I believe they have, a contact page. So that would be the place, if you didn't have your own local infrastructure and you had a conversation with somebody who wanted to talk to somebody who could help them navigate all this, that would be the organization that I would start with.
That's really useful. Thank you. Usha, Eric, Lisbeth, Pao, I see you've joined us. Any questions?
Yeah, I had a question before, but Charlie asked two questions, and the second one was mine. But now that I have the floor, and he's left, we can talk about him now. I just wanted to comment on the reaching beyond the choir part in terms of who you bring in. There are also those people in the middle. It's a spectrum. And I have to say in Belmont, my daughter would be one of those people because she's very much of a climate activist. She just put, well, a wannabe activist. She just put solar panels on. They just bought an electric vehicle, but they probably were pushed over the edge by some of your work. To get that vehicle sooner than they might have otherwise. So congratulations on that. The middle road people, I think, are just as important because they don't have, with big jobs and small children, they don't have the time to get involved in presentations and webinars and whatnot, or to actually put any time into this, but they do have the ability to make the changes. And so just to have it made that easy for them is great. Thank you very much. And my second question was, will you come and talk to other communities? So we might be calling you.
Sure. No, I'd be happy to. I love this stuff. Yeah.
How many people are on your committee involved in this?
So it's, let's see, there's about, I mean, we haven't been as active for the last few years, COVID. We've talked about getting the band back together, but I'd say at our peak, we had probably a dozen people who would come in and out. And then we had staff from Belmont Light who were also helpful. And so we had some, I mean, from their perspective too, right, we're bringing them more revenue. So there's this great symbiosis between a municipal light plant and folks like us who want to encourage electrification, right? Because it's beneficial for everybody. And so that helped a lot too. And then we had, volunteers to do graphic design to make our marketing materials and all that. But so yeah, so a core group of around a dozen folks, I think, mostly volunteers.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Great. Eric, I saw your hand flash up. Did you have another question or?
I did, but it was a factual one, and I realize I can do my own homework, and I'm curious to hear if Pal or Usha have anything.
I just have one comment that, I've been actually trying to get our town to apply for the green community designation. And, within that, the DOER recently, they had they're proposing updates to their stretch codes, which would, require new constructions, including multi-unit constructions, to have provisions for, electric charging. So that's kind of built in. So, it kind of ties back nicely into the whole thing, the green community stuff.
Yeah, that's a great point. I mean, I think getting, same with what we're doing in McLean, the development here is getting people to think in advance and put this EV infrastructure in place is critical.
Well, very good. I see that we got a little warning there. I mean, there's time for one more question if there is one, or we can call this session to an end and return to the main event for some closing remarks. Thank you, Marty. Really appreciate it. I'm sure there'll be some more requests to kind of speak at other communities. And we really appreciate your contribution. Thank you.
Yeah, BelmontDrivesElectric@gmail.com. So happy to chat.
Very good.
Thank you.
I posted it in the chat. Take care.
Okay,
I'll see you on the other side.